Welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I'm Mary D, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mad Love Your Life show. Today we are bringing you season 2, episode 21, and we are going to talk about health. I know it's one of your favorite topics for me to talk about, and so I have a really, really special guest for you today. Her name is Gina Worful, and she is the founder of the Mastering Mindfulness Institute. And while she is a classically trained registered dietitian, her work is far from conventional. Gina's frustration with the diet industry's notoriously poor success rate drove her to dive deeper into human behavior to understand why we sometimes resist or sabotage our diets. And this led her to developing science-based methodologies that empower people in their health. And today, the Mastering Mindfulness Institute teaches people how to leverage mindfulness to transform their health from the inside out. So welcome my very special guest today, Gina. Gina, it's such a pleasure to have you on and to bring your joy to the call. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Mary. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I love to kick off the show with it's kind of the favorite guest question, which is, what do you know now that you wish you had known before you ever got started in dieting? Like before you even touched it all. Like what's that one nugget? Because there are so many people right now struggling with diet, exercise, mindset, and we all seem to lack so much control over what we put in our mouth. And I know you're going to help a lot of people today. So what's that nugget? What's that one thing?
I wish I would have known that I can trust myself and my body. It's just that nobody really taught me how or gave me permission to. And I think sometimes we need one person to tell you, you can trust yourself. You can trust yourself and your own body. But we're just in such a world that doesn't tell us that we can or that we're allowed to do that.
So good. Can you share with us a little bit of your journey? Like how did you come to wanting to make, mindfulness and eating one of your magic sauces in life? Like, you are the wizard when it comes to this, whether it's sharing a recipe that you're doing or whether it's just you getting on and saying, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling today." Like I love just your raw honesty because it's so important I think for people to realize we're not robots. And
Yeah.
we're not, all really able to operate at this like perfect schedule where we eat exactly this every single time. And I want to talk and address some of those things about how like it's okay to be human and how do we get comfortable? How do we get comfortable when it comes to our relationship with food?
Totally. I think I was like a lot of people who really have this inherent desire to be healthy, or maybe not everybody has that inherent desire, but I really like wanted to know what was the truth growing up. And in high school, like I was dying to know the answers for like, what is the truth about health and nutrition? So I was researching everything that I could, looking through magazines. And then I went to school and I got the degrees. I did all the things, right? I got the certifications, the degrees. And I learned so much about health. I packed my brain with all this information. But over time, I started to notice that it was really hard to just fully stick to my eating program. I made this very science-based program for myself, but it was really difficult. I started going through these periods of where I was so motivated and I'd have to think about food, and I was doing everything that they taught me to, right? Pay attention to what you're eating. You can even track your food. You can look at your calories. You can calculate how much food does my body need based on my weight, my height, all these different factors, come up with a number. And then I can track my food to make sure that I'm fitting within those numbers. And the science makes sense, right? But then I would go through these periods of trying to stick with that program, and I would find myself like, all of a sudden, it was like something would take over my brain and I would like self sabotage or make a different choice. And then I would be like, what the heck just happened? Like, you know so much about health, you know so much about nutrition. Why would you just sabotage that whole thing and like let that go? And I was so confused. And I would try again and I would try harder. And then I would exercise more and I would fast longer and it would build up because our society kind of tells us that we should be doing everything in like intensity. And the
Mm,
intensity never got me there. It wasn't more willpower that ever got me there. Eventually I came to this place where I was like, what is happening? Why can't I do this? And I was working with clients at the time. I opened up a private practice as a dietitian and I was giving people these meal plans and these nutrition programs, and they were all struggling too. It
mm,
wasn't just me. Like all of my clients were struggling. One step forward, two steps back. One step forward, two steps back. And everybody was just making a little bit of progress, but nobody was really actually getting anywhere. And I actually started to wonder, like, is the whole health industry a scam? Like, am I a scam? I just
mm.
did 6, 7 years at a university to get these degrees, but
Right.
none of my clients were making a permanent change. Maybe they would go through those motivational sprints and then self sabotage. And I was struggling with the same thing. And that came to
Mm.
be like, the come to Jesus moment of like, we got to get real honest with ourselves here. I can't keep
Yeah.
doing these same cycles again and again. I need to understand what's happening here.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's something to be said for, all the different ways that we all try to go about understanding why we do what we do, right? Like, I know that I hear statistics thrown out there, like, or facts thrown out there, for example, that however you or grow up eating, that's actually habitual. If your
Right.
parents were constantly giving you chips, you're going to grow up being probably someone who loves to eat chips, and that's just
Right.
a natural part of just the habit of a thing. And I even once recognized, when I was married, my husband used to keep ice cream in the freezer, and he loved a little bowl of ice cream with some Hershey's chocolate after dinner every single night. And I started to recognize that if that ice cream weren't there, I don't think it would be a natural inclination to actually reach for it. It was just being in the habit of having dessert. And so that
Mhm.
so many things sometimes are actually habits that we introduce that can be bad habits. And so, let's pretend there's someone that comes in and they rid their house of all these things, but the thoughts still linger, right? So, what's the key to helping unlock some of those thoughts so that we're not dwelling on food? Because I think that's a big one for a lot of people. It's the always thinking about the next meal or always thinking about just food, a craving. Like,
Right.
how do we get that? How do we put that into some perspective so that it doesn't become this like hairy elephant in the room that we can't get
Right.
rid of, and then we create a lot of shame in our lives over wanting the hairy elephant.
Yeah, and I can understand that completely. I was thinking and obsessing about food all day long and think, what's the next meal going to be? Can I willpower my way through it? And I think that that's a really key, like a little clue to you of what is going on underneath the surface that is creating this place of distrust or increased appetite or increased cravings or this magnetic drive for food. So I love that you said, like, what do we need to think about? You said something like that, like, how do we need to think? And that's the first place where I like to begin with people is start by changing the way that you think. So our typical diet industry is going to say, willpower your way through cravings until you get to the next meal. Do everything you can to stick to the program and willpower your way. I do things very unconventionally. I do the opposite. I say move towards those cravings and become more curious. If you allow yourself to use the tools of awareness and curiosity, everything will become revealed to you. You'll start to understand yourself. But because we've been in a society that's like, put your blinders up, use willpower, use your strength, pretend like that's not a thing, you end up bypassing this very rich space that is full of wisdom that you can learn about yourself. Every single pattern, every single thought, every single craving is full of wisdom that we just can't quite see on the surface, and we're missing it because someone told us don't look at it and pretend like it's not there. I mean, how many people think about food or have a craving and then they try to chew gum or drink water or go for a walk or take an appetite suppressant? Everything is distraction, 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 avoid, avoid, avoid. And what happens when we avoid something we don't like?
More of it usually shows up, and we
Yeah,
can't stop thinking
totally.
about it.
It holds its power even stronger, right? That's why it's like we push it
Yeah.
down and it comes back up. So to answer your question, the first thing that I like to encourage people to do is to come from a place of curiosity and bringing in more awareness around your behaviors. Move towards the thing that you're maybe afraid of looking at, and that's really where the freedom comes in. And there's a couple different categories that I like to encourage people to explore. So whenever we're taking like our health journey, our normal diet industry shifts our focus to the outside world. Here's all the food that you need to eat, like on this piece of paper. I like to kind of turn the mirror inward and look at our inside world and start exploring
Mm.
that. So like there's a few different categories I like to encourage people to start looking at. And one of them is to get closer into a deeper relationship with your mind. The first one is your mind. And most people don't really think like, about creating space from their own thoughts in their mind and the way that their mind works. But if you can understand how all these different systems in your body works, you can start working with it instead of working against it. We tend to think of like our mind as being our enemy, but we can get it on our side. We can have it as our ally, right? So the mind, if we know how to work with it, its number one job is to keep us safe. Its job isn't necessarily to try to get us to change and to grow. It's to try to keep us safe. So when we can start to observe the thoughts in our mind, we'll start to hear a voice that might be convincing us to make certain food choices for safety. And we can start to learn about what are the things, how does my mind play a role in my food behaviors? And one of the things that you brought up was like your past or what you learned from your parents. Well, if you think about your mind as being like a storage, a giant database of everything that has happened in your past, and it's collecting information and it's predicting what's going to happen in the future and giving you that information to keep you safe. So maybe you learned from your childhood different things about your food, and then that's predicting like what's going to happen in the future. So one thing that people don't think about is how are the thoughts in my head controlling my experience? So for example, let's say growing up you didn't have enough food at home. This one is really common, where you didn't have
Yep.
enough food, or siblings are like fighting over how much food they could have. And so your brain, as it's learning as a young child, gets programmed to believe that there's not enough food. So, in order to cope with that experience, you overeat at every meal to make sure that you get enough food. You try to overeat when you can. And then that coping strategy becomes a habit and a behavior. And we don't realize that we're living with this programmed belief in our mind that food is scarce. And then, so as an adult, you end up overeating. And then somebody tells you, go on a diet and restrict the food you're eating. Now
Right.
you restrict that food, but your brain is programmed with the belief system that food is scarce. And it will be so triggering to your nervous system, it will feel like a threat to your survival. So it's something
Mm.
like this. It's really common that if you feel like, man, I've had enough food to eat, but I don't know why I feel this magnetic, like I must eat more than what I need. I must get a little extra full. It feels safe to me. That's like one of
Mm.
those clues. That's like an example of one of the clues that can show you why taking away that food could feel so unsafe to your body. And then you
Right.
lose control and end up self-sabotaging it. And it's like, man, why do I always do that? And so without exploring the mind and the belief systems that were created, you'll feel like a failure. And so if you want to address it from the root, when we explore the mind, it's like, what belief system was created? Do I need to update my belief systems like from a nervous system level?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's like you're trimming a weed instead of pulling it. That behavior keeps coming back.
That's right. That's right. This makes me think about sitting down. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with friends, friends of friends, and if there's food on the plate, even though they're full, they'll look at the plate and say, "It just seems like a sin to leave this food on the plate." Like they have to finish it in that moment. And I realized that this is also something, at least my generation for sure went through with our parents, where it was like, eat everything on your plate. They're starving kids in Africa. And then, of course, you'd watch TV and the commercial is starving children in Africa. And you would go, I got to eat my food because that's, I got to be doing it for somebody else. There are people starving around the world right now. And also, I think as parents with children, not always thinking about what are we actually saying to what are we instilling, what beliefs are we instilling into these little humans,
Yeah.
knowing that this is going to show up for them later in life and will actually it will crown their relationship to food. It's going to actually show them how to have a relationship with food through their thoughts, actions, words, beliefs. And one of the things that really helped me is exactly what you said, which is stop fighting it. Because I think that I definitely went through that phase as well of like, let me just fight this. My urge to want to have a piece of cake, my urge to want to enjoy a brownie. I think I associate part of what I associate joy with is food. Like as an Asian culture, when we get together, we usually get together to eat together, like sharing a
Mm-hmm.
meal, being together in that way always feels really good. And so the reframe I've had to give myself and as an adult is if I want a piece of cake, I'm going to order the cake. Now, I may
Mm-hmm.
not eat it all. I actually may not eat it at all. I may take it to go. And when I do that, what I find is as long as it's accessible, I don't actually need to eat it. And I don't know what belief system that is. I don't know where that got transplanted from, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the fact that like I have a little jar of sugar and it's got little candy bars and stuff. And I can tell you those have been sitting there for probably at least 2 years now. And I don't think I've touched one of them. And it's a funny, it's like psychological little game that I play with myself of like, I'm not going to deny myself these things. I'm going to make them available if I want them. So there is no lack here when it comes to getting those things. And if I need to associate them with joy at any time, but I found that having them just kind of in eyesight for me goes, oh, it's there. I'm not lacking anything, but I also don't feel the need to eat it. I don't have a craving for it. I
Yeah.
just know that it's a step away, right? If I ever want to, and most of the time I
Yeah.
don't. So I find that like that's a funny little like trick that I've had to play on myself because I haven't quite identified really under the surface what the one thing is or what the
Mm-hmm.
historical, I don't have a memory of maybe it was being rewarded with sugar in school or something like that, and so I think of them as little trophies, Snickers are trophies in some
Yeah.
magical land. Yeah. But I think that cravings are certainly a real thing for people. So how do we address things like cravings? Do we sugar, we talk about it being addicting, like does that
Yeah.
play into it? Because I know you have great knowledge on both of these topics.
Yeah, I love this topic. I love talking about cravings. And that's so first I have people explore their mind, and then I also have them explore their relationship with cravings. So now we're entering down into the body more. And cravings is another one that has been uh, shamed. What do we do to get rid of cravings? And if you're doing something to get rid of cravings, whether it's an appetite suppressant or anything, a distraction, you are blocking a really important signal from your body. And so we can
Mhm.
really relieve ourselves of a lot of judgment and shame. I know it has probably been really hard for a lot of people who don't feel like they have control over their cravings. And I understand that because I absolutely have lived that pain. But with compassion comes when you understand what's happening inside of your body. And this is science. So, this is science everyone should know. I don't know why everyone isn't taught this. You have the ability to regulate your own appetite and your own cravings inside of your body when you understand this mechanism. So, what you described to me when you're like, oh, I can have the candies over here. I have one when I want. It's, I don't obsess about it. I don't crave it all the time. I just can have it and eat it and walk away. That's a sign of a regulated nervous system. That is like your body internally feels safe. And when that system is activated, your parasympathetic nervous system, your body feels calm, it feels safe. That's the prefrontal cortex in your brain working. And so you'll eat the food. You might like the taste of food, but you don't feel absolutely controlled by food. You're just like, this is fun. This tastes good. I can eat some. I can walk away. When you switch over into a different state of where you feel like something took over your brain and you could be on the prowl for food, like you are in this animalistic like state. And it doesn't matter what goals you have, what willpower you have, you're like in this tunnel vision state where you're like, I need this. And then you don't have that self trust and you overeat it until you don't feel well. That is a dysregulated nervous system.
Mm.
And that comes from the area of the brain, the amygdala, which is fight or flight. And fight or flight is always more powerful than the prefrontal cortex because its job is survival. The prefrontal cortex in the brain is like your goal setting, your willpower, your motivation. But the amygdala is survival. So it will disconnect the area of your brain that gives you rational thinking. It'll turn your survival brain on, and then you go into this animalistic like state where you are just like on the prowl for food. And so it'll create this feeling like a hypnosis, like what the heck, why did I just go tunnel vision and grab something? It's really important to know that this is just an activated nervous system. Your body is seeking food for safety. And then once you eat the food, usually it's like sugar or something because that's a fuel source. So that creates safety in our body. When we eat excess calories or sugar or carbohydrates, that provides the adequate calories to signal to the body, okay, we're safe. When that happens, you might feel the shift. Click, my brain turns back over. Now all of a sudden I have my rational thinking back and I'm like, oh, why would I just do that? Why would I eat that? Those aren't my goals. Willpower's back online. And then that's where the shame and the judgment comes in. You can
Mm.
feel this on and off switching in the body and the brain. But if you don't understand it, then you'll be like, why did I have willpower? And then I had no willpower. And then I had it again and I judged myself. So when you talked about like sugar, I think sugar addiction and that, it's not that sugar addiction isn't real because we can become dependent on the good feelings that it creates, but removing and eliminating sugar doesn't actually get to the source of the problem. The source of the problem is more of these deeper things of what is activating the nervous system and how do we begin to work with the nervous system so that you feel back uh, in your own power and not in a hypnosis. So now, once I learned how to work with this system, I still love the taste of food. I love good food, but I don't ever feel like something takes over my brain and controls me anymore. It's a completely
Mm.
different experience.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good and so insightful. And I think what's interesting to hear you talk about is the like in-body experience, right? The nervous system piece because that's also I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that you hear from people who have been on the planet for a minute and have good advice for people, which is learn to regulate your nervous system. Like it will change your life. And not just it sounds like in food, but also just in your daily living. When people say, "Oh, I'm really anxious," it's like, well, that just means there's somewhere in your nervous system that is asking for some peace and it doesn't have it. Whether that's based on history, whether that's based on current thoughts and current situations and the roller coaster of life that we all get to be on, and I think it's really fascinating because so much ties back into the nervous system and just how
Yeah.
much it does control our body, right? It is that fight or flight in all things, whether it's just the difference between being on stage and being anxious and excited are literally whichever whether you decided that it's exciting versus oh gosh, this is so like heart-wrenching. I don't know if I can do it. It's like literally the same feeling. I don't know if y'all knew that, but it's a crazy like science. I recently, Gina, had a brain map, and it was really fascinating to do the brain map, then do some work just to see like what is going on in the brain, and the frontal lobe was where I had some stuff happening, and then also 6 months later they mapped me again after doing just some I do these fun little brain exercises and I play games that are good for your brain. And just how much the brain cleared up. But also, I could tell you that my nervous system, also, even more so, was very much in just a very good, steady state of peace, feeling
Wow.
safe, feeling really good. Yeah. And that has so much to do with it is just, can we feel safe in our own body? And I think for a lot of
Mhm.
people, unfortunately, that answer is no. Whether
Mm.
it's from the the shame that's built up over time over maybe secret habits. We hear that, people who secretly go to their car and eat a dozen donuts, or, they pull up to McDonald's at 10 o'clock every night and order, as many things as they can off the menu, and then they get sick afterwards. Like, there's so many different ways that people experience a level of almost self-abuse in that way, and not because they woke up one day and said, I think I'd like to abuse myself today, but just the feelings of worthiness that also underlie what's happening in our nervous system because we didn't feel safe growing up, or we don't feel
Ah,
safe in the environment we're in now. And so I think there's so many things to unpack for a lot of people. And
mhm.
what would you say, if someone is hearing all of this for the first time and they're really at a point where they're like, okay, wow, I have it in my awareness now that my nervous system is to blame.
Yeah,
And now how do I make peace with that nervous system? Is there
sure.
any one particular modality that you found was great for you, or is there, are there some that you want to just mention or recommend?
Yeah, so I'll take you through the process of what I do and what I suggest. So yeah, first use like giving yourself permission to use your stubborn, tricky habits that you want to get rid of. Use them as little messages from angels telling you that there's something inside to learn about yourself. When you can see it as that, you can see, wow, I have this little message. When I feel that magnetic towards pull towards food, that's a sign that my body, that my heart, that my soul is speaking to me that I just need something right now. There's something that I haven't been feeling or experiencing. So I think of nervous system regulation as two different really important parts. And the first part is when you feel a craving come on, it kind of comes on like a wave. Like it'll start to build throughout the day. Your body's physiology might start to shift. You want to start noticing and actually paying attention. What's happening in my body? And then it'll come up like a peak and then it'll kind of come off. And you want to ride the wave instead of, you live in California, yeah, where instead of turning into the wave and trying to fight it, we want to try to surf the wave and be in it and be with this craving. So the first thing that you want to do is use the power of your breath. Your breath is the easiest, most accessible, most affordable tool that you will always have on hand. And if you think about when you are in a dysregulated nervous system state, that sympathetic, you might be holding your breath or you might be breathing shallow. You think about like hyperventilation. Most of us
Yes.
live in that state. When we're
Mm.
breathing in that pattern, there's receptors in our lungs that will tell our body, are we safe or are we not safe? So if you're breathing in that state of like fight or flight, shallow breathing or holding your breath, you're signaling to your body we're in the stress state. When you're in fight or flight, all your awareness leaves your body and it goes up into your mind. And that's where we start getting cravings. I need safety. We're in fight or flight. I'm not okay. I'm not safe. When we use the breath, we actually add oxygen to our lungs, which has receptors at the bottom, which sends out signals to the body to lower cortisol that you're safe. It's like when you see a baby sleeping and its belly is rising and falling, and you're taking a nice slow breath. So you can use your breath to start regulating your nervous system. And I started doing this when I noticed that I would get an intense craving come on, and I just needed to slow down the moment so I could understand what is happening in this moment. So I'd bring my hand to my heart, and that would like move my awareness kind of down into my body. I'd get out of like crazy craving in my head, and I'd take a slow breath. And you can even just try it, see how that feels. You kind of feel your awareness like come down into your body more when you take that breath.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting because it also switches focus, right? So it switches the focus. The turn kind of turns off anything that's nee, 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 and
Yeah.
turns it to like, oh, let me just focus on that deep breath in, like seeing it in my mind's eye go into my stomach, come back up, and taking that breath. I think it's a great visual along with just, of course, how it feels.
Yeah.
And breath work obviously has folks, if you don't haven't invested in any breath work, haven't done any, I can tell you that you can pretty much Google it and you'll see lots of great science behind breath work and why it's so great for you. And Gina's right. This is like the easiest, affordable, accessible thing that you can do, right? We do it so unconsciously as we're breathing or holding our breath in some moments as well. So what happens when we get intentional about our breath and bring ourselves to a place where we can, as soon as the sirens start to go off in our head, we can go, oh, let me bring in the breath, right? That's our fire extinguisher in the body, basically, when we're feeling like things are crazy and on fire. So I
Yeah.
love that. I
And
think the
I
breath is such an important piece.
and the breath is really step one. So, step one is use your breath to bring down the nervous system so you can actually start having awareness of what is happening inside of your body. Your breath allows you to move your awareness down into your body so you can start to understand what's happening inside of here. So that breath is a really powerful tool. You can use your breath. So I think of if you were to break it down into steps, the first step is to reconnect. You reconnect with your body, you take a breath, you calm your nervous system down. The second step that I like people to do is to reset. So when you're in this, sucked into this magnetic feeling with a food craving, you're kind of like trapped in the pattern and you're like in this hypnosis. We want to break this hypnotic pattern and move out of the pattern that you're in. So like if I was in the kitchen, I would be like, whoo, I like gotta shake it up. I gotta get out of the kitchen and like just break this hypnosis that I'm in for a minute. Once I remove myself out of that pattern, then the third one is the reflection. And the reflection is your most important part of this entire process. It's not about, did I make it through and get away from the craving? To me, I don't care if you ate the food or not, because that's not, it doesn't matter. That's going to resolve itself. It doesn't matter if you gave into the craving or if you didn't. But what you want to do is have the reflection to understand what was happening inside of that moment. And when you do the reflection and you come into a place with your body, you can start asking deeper questions. What was I really needing? What was I feeling? What beliefs are coming up for me around this experience? Do I believe that I'm not worthy of health? Do I believe that taking care of myself is selfish? Do I feel like I'm lacking internally a source of love or pleasure or
Mhm.
joy? We can start asking these questions to understand what is it really that our mind, our body, our heart, our soul is really actually craving in that moment.
Yes, so good, so good. Everyone, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. And then when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit more about this topic. And we're going to we're going to recap the 3 things that you need to regulate your nervous system to, not feel like you have to kill yourself dieting, like to just be in a natural flow state. We'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network. Dr. RC, will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and TuneIn Radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I do want to remind you that at any point during the live show, you can call in your request, your questions if you'd like to. Gina's here. We've got her. We're happy to take your questions. You'll dial 1-866-451-1451. Or if you're streaming live from the channel, you can drop your questions for me down in the chat, and the engineers will grab that and pass it on over to us so we can get those questions answered. I also want to mention that if you'd like to get in touch with Gina today, just know that her information is going to be down in the show notes. It's down in the comments, and you can find everything you need to know there to connect with her, to follow her, and continue to just be fed this phenomenal advice so that you can make some shifts and some changes. Gina, before the break, we were talking about those three things that can really help us get into a state of regulation. So will you just real quickly cover those one more time, and let's recap those for our folks here that are listening.
Yeah. So when you're in that moment, the first thing that you want to do is reconnect with yourself, take a slow breath. And there's all different types of tools that you can use to calm down your nervous system. I like to use the breath. I think it's very easy, readily accessible. You want to reconnect with yourself and then just reset out of the space that you're in, and then do some reflection. And the reflection is what's going to give you more information to hit the core of the nervous system, where, like, if you think about things like the breath, meditation, tapping, different types of tools, they can help bring down your nervous system in the moment. But if there's like a deeper trigger and it keeps showing up, you're going to be constantly managing the nervous system instead of getting to the root. So when you go a little bit deeper and you dive into the deeper reflection of what's really going on inside of me, then you can see, is there a deeper nervous system trigger? If there's maybe a belief or a story of like, I'm not good enough, that's going to activate the nervous system all day. Or if I don't get enough done today, I won't be good enough. Or my partner might not leave me, I'm not lovable. Or might leave me, I'm not lovable. Or whatever is happening internally, that might be creating the chronic activation. And that's where the reflection can help you go deeper to understand what's happening in there.
So good. So good. Yeah, I think worthiness comes up for so many people just
Yeah.
in general, right? Around that's why we have things like people pleasing. And we also have the other end of the spectrum, which and so I always wonder, like, what happens when you also have folks who might have an underactive nervous system. So almost like I think of I think of, like, sometimes my younger generation of nieces and nephews that this has happened to, where they almost seem unmotivated. Like, it's not that they have that,
Yeah.
like, ravenous, craze, but rather they're just very lethargic in their body. It's like their system actually needs to have a little jump start. Like, is there an opposite side to the breath in that case?
Well, and that comes up a lot with people who are like, why do I procrastinate? Why do I feel unmotivated with my health? Why am I unenthusiastic or not excited? And I think that happens sometimes when we don't believe we're not super clear on what we desire. And that desire, maybe sometimes, like with our health, it might be founded in like a should versus a true desire. And I find that when people pull apart the differences between, is this something that I really desire versus something that I should do, the inherent motivation starts to shift. So for example, I like used to run on the treadmill all the time because I felt like I should, but it was a battle every day doing it. And I lacked excitement and motivation. When I discovered dancing, all I can think about every week is going to this dance class. It's great exercise. It's like I'm doing cardio for like 2 or 3 hours straight. And you never have to give me this excitement and intrinsic motivation. So I think that it is very helpful. One of the pieces I have people do is connecting to their deepest selves or their soul, and they feel what feels expansive to me. And sometimes we get so burdened with what society tells us how we should move our bodies, the perfect exercise program, what we should eat, how we should live our lives, how we should meditate, what time we should wake up in the morning. Everything is should, that we can get disconnected from that inner compass of like what really lights me up and gives me pleasure and joy. And that everything I do can be full of pleasure and joy. And then I think it can also be disheartening if you don't believe that you're capable of achieving the outcome. I think that if you really believed that you were capable of it and it was possible, it feels a lot more inspiring and uplifting and motivating to go after. There has to be a driver on the other side to want to do it. There has to be a really deep why as well. You know, there has to be a really, really deep reason for why we're doing anything, or else it might just be like, I should, don't really want to, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah, just not having a big enough vision for
Mhm.
what you actually want or what you want to achieve can definitely interfere with that. So what is when you think future forward, like what is an ideal scenario of what things look like for your practice, for your people? Like what's the ultimate compliment your people can pay you, Gina? What is that after, someone's worked with you? What would you say is the highest level of satisfaction and pleasure for you in your business when it comes to results?
I can tell you, two people have said this to me before, and I just hold on to it so dearly. Two people said, you show people the truth of who they are. And
Mm,
that is the most fulfilling thing to me because I've had so many students who were like, I thought I was a food addict, and I realized I'm not. I thought I was this. I thought I didn't have self-control. I thought all these identities about myself. I thought I wasn't worthy. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I was broken and I couldn't stick to a diet.
mm,
And then when they move into a deeper relationship with themselves and all of that criticism naturally dissolves and they start believing in themselves and trusting their own
yeah.
body, trusting in their cravings, they say that it's the truth. It's like they get to experience the truth of themselves. And to me, that's been the most rewarding.
So good, so good. And I'm thinking about like these times, right? These times meaning right now, what is the hot topic? Sometimes it's keto, sometimes it's, some other diet, some other fad. Right now, the topic is things like semaglutide
Yeah.
and Ozempic and all the Wegovy, all these different medications that are coming out that are helping people lose weight. And one of the things that they talk about that these medications are doing is it's switching. I guess that there's a switch that basically they're saying it belongs in some people's brain that's always thinking about food, and it turns that switch off. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about things like medication as a whether it's a supplement or a replacement in these cases? And I would love to just hear your thoughts on it because I feel like there's a mixed bag out there, and
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated to see what some people have to say about what's happening now.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to consider. And I don't have a hard stance against it because I do know that there are some people who say, I was in dire need of losing weight and I needed something. Like this was critical for my health and it helped me, right? I'm sure there are some people out there who feel that it saved their life. And I don't want to discount that. I think that is also like really important to take into consideration. What I do have is I have had some clients and some students who have been on it and they now want to get off of it. They don't want to be on a medication every month. It's $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Um, and potentially having side effects. I've had some people tell me they've gone to the ER from it before. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that it comes without potential risks and side effects. But I have had several students and clients who have wanted to get off of it, and they're really struggling to, because now they fear their appetite and their hunger. They're so used to being numb to their own
Mhm.
appetite that now there's this inherent part of their body that they fear, instead of just
Mm.
trusting that, like, my body gets hungry when it needs to. I know how to normalize my appetite. So I believe that it might be useful, but like a lot of people regain the weight because they didn't get to the root of why they didn't trust themselves with food in the first place. So I do think
Mhm.
it's kind of a band-aid solution. And a lot of people do struggle to get off of it for that reason. And they're then feeling a lot of fear around their own body. And
Mhm.
I love helping people not fear any aspect of their body, and understanding, how do I know how to regulate my own appetite? What makes it go up? What makes it go down? What normalizes it, so that I can trust in this communication that my body has?
Yeah, so good, so
I
good.
saw I saw a thing. I read an article that now they're recommending semaglutide for, I believe, anyone like teens, like 13, like starting at 12 or 13 years old, as like a first line of like weight loss. And,
Wow.
I think it's very unfortunate, because we're starting off children from a very young age of, let's just disconnect from your body and numb you from things like your appetite, instead of really teaching them about our cravings and our emotions, and how this whole system in our body just actually works.
Absolutely. Well, and not just that, but how about the quality of our food here in America? How
Yeah.
I mean, the EU would be banning some of our food just for the ingredients that are in the stuff that we eat, or even in how wheat here is produced. Right? It's made so that crops can grow and not, will kill the worm. But also, this is all going into our body, and how does that also changing our microbiome? How is it changing? What effects it has on our own body.
Yeah.
We're a country of pizza, beer, and
Yeah,
and sadly still
absolutely.
cigarettes. So it's all these other things also that I think people aren't um that there's a holistic picture here of all the things that are happening, and we do have a bit of an epidemic. There are more obese children today than ever. And so what happens when the parents have bad habits, when they're saying things like eat everything on your plate, or where the reward is sugar, and if that's what kids are being taught and the habits that they're growing up with, then it's very natural that they're just going to continue down that line because it's what they know. And
Mhm.
a lot of people, I know I had to hear it from a nutritionist who was speaking at an event to tell me to like really read my labels. And then when we talk about, if you can't even understand the ingredients, you probably don't need to stick it in your mouth. And that
Mm.
was really like the most simple, like it was this really simple way to put it. And
Mm.
it makes sense, because when I turn a package over and I don't understand half the ingredients, that's an
Yeah.
immediate, like, yeah, let me set that down, because I don't know what's going in my body. And we
Right.
all know that, like, sometimes those things, can cause us to actually keep weight, can cause us to keep toxins in our body. It doesn't allow our body to clean itself out in this really natural way, and function as it should, so that we can say, oh, I am hungry, and I'm particularly looking for, I know for myself this happens, where the other day I was craving a lasagna, and I went, wow, I never really crave a lasagna. Like, I love a lasagna, but it's not my like favorite food of all time. And so when I had that thought pop in my head, I said to myself, what is my body telling me it needs? It's telling me it needs some protein, it's telling me it needs some calcium, and I probably need a few more carbs. So like that was
That's
like such
awesome.
an like yeah, it was like such an instant, like, oh, actually, what is my body telling me it needs? Do I need to actually go get a lasagna? No, but that was the association that I got in my mind that just told me, though, those are actually the three things that I need to go and capture for myself. So let me go find that food and fill my body with it, so my body can go, okay, thank you, you've given us exactly what we need today.
I
And
love that.
yeah, like it's been great, because it's even with hamburgers, that's usually my example, because I'm not a big, like, I don't love hamburgers. I don't eat them all the time. I didn't grow up eating them. But every now and then I'll get a ping where it's like, oh, I want a hamburger. And I know, oh, my body wants some protein. So let me go find some good protein. And that's the signal for me. So it's just,
Yeah.
it is getting in touch, with how can, and I gamify it, right? It's fun for me. It's fun
Yeah.
for me when I think of some random food and I'm like, oh, I know what my body needs right now.
Yeah. And that's the fun thing when you start to decipher the language of what's happening inside of your body. So you might notice that like your mind has concrete thought of like, oh, you should eat this food. It's often like you should eat this food because it might be nutrition based, it might be safety based. And then you can feel, when is your body like, yes, when my body communicates to me, it's like, ooh, I'm drawn to this food. It would feel good. It feels in resonance. It feels expansive. And then when a craving speaks to us, sometimes that's like, ooh, I have this drive for pleasure, or my nervous system is activated, so I'm needing safety. And so there's like different, it's more of like a magnetic type pull for food. And so we can start to decipher the language that comes from our mind, our body, our cravings, and begin to work with those pieces and see like, what do I really need right now? Do I need a food? Do I need that food? Do I need something else inside of me internally?
Right, right. Yes, yes, and yes. And I also think that if people will stop and think about the next time when something shows up for them and they're like, oh, like when I think about a lasagna or a burger, that like they can give themselves that ping of like, oh, I think this is my body just giving me some signals here and letting me know what I need, and then have some fun with it. And of course, trying to find cleaner versions of whatever's showing up to put into our body to have optimal health. Talk to
Mhm.
me, Gina, because about exercise. Because I heard you say something really important, which was that you used to run and you hated it, but you'd loathe it, but you'd still do it, and then you shifted that to I found dancing, which is something I can just get lost in and just enjoy. And I find that to be really beautiful, like to find the activities that we actually enjoy doing, because I believe there is a physical activity out there for everyone, even if it's just walking. Walking is like one of the most, simple ones that folks can do. But what would you say, how big of a factor is the exercise factor for people when it comes to managing their weight?
What I could say is that I think that our bodies are designed for movement. I think in general, we tend to be too sedentary, but I think that it's really important that where does it come from? And so a long time ago when I was exercising, it was coming from a place of you should and fear and rigidity. And so I think that added to the stress in my body and raising my cortisol. And let me tell you, a body doesn't lose weight when when it's in a state of fear. It's very hard to fear and push and force your body into health. And so when I realized how hard on myself I was and how rigid I was with everything, I swung way the other way. And I was like, oh my gosh, my body is dying to feel safe. It's dying for gentleness and love and nurturing. And so I stopped exercising for like a year and really went into this very gentle place. And then I started to realize, my body actually does like some movement. My body actually does need some, but can I bring the two of these things together? And so now what I like to do is make sure that my body is not being forced into anything, that my body feels like it's on my team. So I'm not like, you need to do this because you're not good enough, and this force. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm spending every day checking in with my body, and I'm like, body, how can I support you today? And people get scared of that question because they're like, well, if I just listen to my body will want to sit on the couch all day. But truly, like, let's say if you had a day all day laying on the couch watching TV, do you feel really good? Typically, you don't. Like,
Typically
if
not.
if you did like an 8-hour day or a 10-hour day of sitting on the couch, you can tell your body doesn't really feel great and nourished by sitting all the time either. So I started to realize my body does want movement, but my body wants to feel safe. And so I would start tuning into my body and saying, body, what do we want today? Do we want to push? Do we want to do something fun? Do we want to go walking? Do we want yoga? Do we need stretching? Do we want to pick up some weights today? But it's from a place of I'm listening to you. I love you. I support you. I'm here for your best interests. If that means we need to rest today, we rest. And to me, by having this relationship with my body that is based in love and partnership has allowed me to work with it and not feel like my body is against me and at war. When I force my body into rigid eating, restriction, force, you're not good enough, push, it was like my body was battling against me.
Mm.
But when I come to this place of tuning in and feeling, what do I love? What feels good in my body? And can I push myself? Because that feels good too sometimes. It feels like I'm the healthiest I've ever been, but in a place that feels like harmony.
Yes, yes, and yes to harmony. Oh, that's such a good feeling. Such a good feeling. For those of you who have been on the struggle bus with any diet, with how you're feeling about yourself, with trying to get down to the root cause, and you're recognizing that you probably have some nervous system stuff happening, I highly encourage you to check out Gina and her body of work. She's fun to follow. She's so transparent. It's just so fun to just kind of like be in your kitchen with you. And all the days that you have their ups and downs, and I just
Yep.
appreciate the authenticity of it. Like it's really beautiful
Thank
because it's
you.
real life. Not every day is glitter and roses. So it's fun to just kind of watch us all human our way through life, and knowing that hey, there's going to be a better day.
We're just
Today's
trying to
feeling a
figure it
little rough.
out,
That's right. That's
I'm right
right.
here with you. We're just
Yes.
figuring it out as we go.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Some nights it's cereal for dinner, and that's just how it goes. Like,
That's how we roll.
and that's right. And that's sometimes how we have to roll. Exactly. And what we're going to do today, y'all, is Gina and I are going to head over to my YouTube channel, which is the Mad Love Your Life show. And we are going to have an extended version of today's show over there, since we're coming to the top of the hour here for our live show on BBTV. So if any of you want to head over there, you can catch us there. You can also catch a lot more great content. For any of you are still wondering where that's at, you can go to maryd.com and grab the links and information there. With that, Gina, thank you again for being just a source of wisdom and health for everyone and shining your light. And for our guests today that are listening and tuning in, until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you, and may love always guide you on your path. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.maryd.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.